God damn, that was good! My deep love of comics all started because of the 90s Saturday morning cartoons. Watching Batman and the X-Men and that Spider-Man show in the 90s. That holy trinity of cartoons is why I love comics. I watched them, and then that led me to discover the comics themselves. Those three cartoons hold an incredibly deep place in my heart. And of all the Spider-Man shows I've watched over the years, hoping someday to recapture that 90s magic, there's been some good ones, don't get me wrong. Nothing's come close though, until now. This is the closest feeling I've had to the original 90s Spider-Man cartoon. This right here, your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. God damn, this was good. A real spiritual successor. By the way, this review is going to be all over the place because I'm on a massive wave of hype. I'll try to keep it concise though. One of the things that made the 90s cartoon so special was the plethora of cameos from the X-Men, Blade, all of the villains, the likes of Daredevil appearing in there. It was just Deadpool, I believe, was in there. It was just non-stop action. It was literally an ensemble comic book page come to life was that cartoon. And this is similar. There's cameos abound in this series. Should probably mention before continuing, I'm going to try and avoid spoilers, but there's going to be spoilers in this review. Not big spoilers, but like certain little things that may make you pop, like the cameos I'm about to mention. So be warned watching this. Guess what I'm trying to say is if you're a Spider-Man fan, you owe it yourself to watch this series, and then once you've seen it, you can come back and watch if you're afraid of spoilers. If you're not afraid of spoilers, well, cameos like Doctor Strange, cameos like Thaddeus Ross, cameos like Iron Man and Daredevil. These cameos are arriving on screen, and I was like, oh Jesus, this is the 90s vibe again. And then to build on those cameos, you've got deep lore cuts and lore teasers. Things like the symbiote are in there. Teasers of the Green Goblin, and then that goes up a level and you realize that this is actually kind of adjacent to the existing MCU. There's repeated references to the Sokovia Accords, to the Chitauri invasion of New York. All of these cameos and deep lore cuts and references to the MCU make this world feel expanded, lived in, and right at home in the Marvel Universe. It just makes Spider-Man feel familiar in the best possible way. And what's strange is that while feeling oh so familiar and nostalgic and just right, for lack of a better word, while feeling all of those things, they go and reimagine Spider-Man. Now, I of course have not read every Spider-Man comic out there. Jesus, I've not even read many Spider-Man comics. I've read some. I've read enough that I would call myself a connoisseur. Not an expert, but certainly a connoisseur. Seen all the movies, watched all the cartoons, and read a lot of comics. But from what I'm personally familiar with, this series is a complete reimagining of Peter Parker's story. And warning here, I am going to get into a bit more specific spoiler stuff now, so just skip ahead a few minutes if you're worried about that. It reimagines things like his relationship with Norman Osborn. So you remember in that first MCU Spider-Man when it's Tony Stark who recruits him, they kind of recreate that scene, but with Norman. So it's familiar, but reimagined, adjacent to the MCU. Norman Osborn, again, spoiler here, ends up knowing his identification and actually helping Spider-Man and being the one who gives Spider-Man his multitude of suits. Again, kind of familiar plot beats, but reimagined. And it all works! It all works so well. Another thing I want to touch on, the animation. Now, I was a little bit apprehensive when I saw the animation style in the trailer. This is awesome. This cell shading animation is spectacular, and it lends itself to Spider-Man so well, from the shadows, the way that the buildings are drawn, to the speed at which he swings through the city streets. The cell shading is stunning, and it lends itself well to the action. Let's talk about the action. The action set pieces and the fight choreography are some of, hear me, I'm not exaggerating, some of the best I have ever seen from Spidey anywhere. Movie, comic, video game, anywhere. The seamlessness with which he zips around, takes down enemies with his evasive maneuvers and use of his web attacks. It's just poetry in motion. Being real, the only thing I can think of that's maybe superior to this in the way that Spider-Man moves during combat, probably the Insomniac Spider-Man games. I said that pretty much nailed Spider-Man's movement, didn't it? This is a close second. Like on-screen, small screen, cartoon screen, this is better than anything I have ever seen, fight-wise and choreography-wise, except only the Insomniac games. One negative, though, that said, when it comes to the movement, they've done wonders with Spidey's movement, not so much with all the other characters. There's a scene, especially in episode 9, without going into detail of the ins and outs, but there's a fight scene between two gangs, essentially. The speed at which the gangs are moving and throwing punches, really poorly done. And that was a standout instance of the fight choreography from the secondary characters being poorly done. But there's a number of times throughout the episode where I thought, oh, the movement of that character felt a bit labored and slow. Don't get me wrong, I'm not looking for my secondary characters to have Spider-Man maneuverability and speed here, but I'm also not looking for snail pace, and they didn't strike that balance well, in my opinion. So because of how well Spidey moves, it really was apparent of how maybe they didn't put enough effort into the movement generation of the other characters. Let's adjust the elephant in the room, because I'm sure there's going to be that oh so familiar small corner but loud corner of the internet which are going to say, this show is woke. Normally I wouldn't give this the time of day, I just need to touch on this very quickly. The elephant in the room is that there are some race swaps and gender swaps. They've race swapped Harry and Norman Osborn, both black guys now. Tombstone got race swapped. He's also a black guy now. To be fair though, Tombstone basically had his whole identity and origin story completely reimagined from the ground up. Dr. Connors is now a woman. And it's not the first time we've seen gender swaps with villains. Look at Doc Ock in Into the Spider-Verse. The big question is, do these race swaps and gender swaps inherently change and affect what makes these iconic characters these characters? No! Osborn being black or white has zero bearing on his ambitions and aspirations and motivations as a villain. Harry Osborn struggling to gain the adoration and respect of his estranged father is not something that's synonymous with a young white boy. So race again doesn't really factor in here, so it's non-offensive. Dr. Connors missing an arm and in the long term looking for ways to grow it back with their brilliant mind is not something that's intrinsically linked to them being a man or a woman. And as for Tombstone, as I said, he's completely imagined his worlds apart, and I like what they've done with this new Tombstone as an origin story. Scorpion and Doc Ock are pretty much unchanged in appearance, though their origins are ever so slightly different, and again, these new origins, for me at least, they do work. So all in all, the race swaps, the gender swaps, if you're really gonna get, peg-holed by something like that and it's gonna frustrate you, sucks to be you. For me, yes, there's the initial jarring moment where you're like, oh wow, Norman Osborn's a black guy, and then you're instantly like, oh okay, Norman Osborn's a black guy. Biggest whatever, let's carry on, this is still a great character. And that kind of applies to everything where they've race swapped and gender swapped. It doesn't affect the characters in a negative way at all. If you want to draw attention to that, that's on you. The Easter eggs that they pepper this series with are yet another instance of things being reimagined in the show. Lines like, go get him, Tiger, not from the character you would expect. With great power comes... it's slightly different now and delivered by a different character, wait and see. But when you hear these references, as a fan, you will go, he said the thing. You'll pop, you'll get, it's cheap heat, but you'll pop. It's fun. It's what you tune in for in some level. So what am I scoring this masterful work of animation? It's going high. Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man gets a solid 9 out of 10 from me. At its core, it's true to what makes Spider-Man so special. High school student wrestling with his newfound powers and trying to juggle his life of personal life, school life, and superhero life, and ultimately not managing to cope with all of it. It's incredibly endearing, it's universally appealing, and it's basically timeless at this point. There was no dud episode. Every single moment, character interaction, and frame is there to move the plot along and develops all the characters in a completely organic way. From the first minute to the last, this was a joy to watch and experience. They've perfectly left a few plot threads open and teased what comes next. It's great to know that season 2 and 3 have already been greenlit and they've basically finished the writing for season 2 already. This was such a breath of fresh air and I cannot wait for season 2. If you're a Spider-Man fan, this is essential viewing. You owe it to yourself to watch this. So what did you all think of, I guess, both the show and my review? Are you throwing daggers at the screen now because I defended the gender swapping and race swapping? What did you manage to look over it? Did you appreciate the reimagining of some of the core aspects of Spider-Man and how they worked, or did they not work for you? Or was your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man not even on your radar, and what I've said either pushed you away or brought you in? Let me know down in the comments. There's no right or wrong answers. Well, unless you get angry about race swapping in this particular instance, because it was just like well done as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, that's not to say race swapping is always good or necessary. It can indeed be triggering for unnecessary reasons. In this case, I'm just saying, as a final word on this, it worked for me. But everything I just asked, I want to know from you guys. What did you think? Comment below, like the video, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And I'm looking forward to season 2, and I'm looking forward to what you guys all have to say. Long love cinema, or in this case, I guess, long love Spider-Man, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye for now.